The hallway to conference room B stretched like a runway made for dread. Every click of Diana Rowe's heels echoed louder than it should have, like the sound of someone walking toward their own professional execution. When she reached the glass door, she paused, just for half a second. Inside, Gavin Trent was already seated, perfect posture, crisp charcoal suit, his laptop open but eyes focused forward as if he had rehearsed this moment and knew exactly where to place every breath. The room was silent. Too silent. No HR rep, no colleague, no legal observer, just two professionals, and a decision already made by one of them. "Sit," Gavin said, not bothering to stand. His voice was clipped, polite, controlled. Too controlled. Diana took her seat slowly, deliberately, her back straight, her hands resting lightly on the polished mahogany table. In front of her, perfectly centered, was a single manila folder. It didn't scream. It didn't need to. It whispered, "End of the road." Then came the words, cold, clean, final. "This is your resignation letter." Diana didn't move. She didn't reach for the folder. She didn't even blink. "I haven't submitted any resignation," she said calmly. Gavin smiled, but it wasn't kind. It wasn't real. It was the smile of a man who believed he had already won. "You're about to," he said simply. Then he pushed the folder toward her with 2 fingers. And beside it, almost ceremonially, he laid down a Mont Blanc pen, its sleek black barrel gleaming under the conference room lights like a weapon dressed in luxury. Diana stared at the pen, then at the man across from her, and in that moment she knew this wasn't about job performance, this wasn't a professional transition, this was a purge, a corporate assassination. "Sign it," Gavin said softly, voice dropping half a tone lower, as if to make space for menace. "Or I'll make sure you never work again. Not here, not in Denver, not in this industry." His fingers steepled in front of him. Calm, confident. He continued without blinking. "You know how small this industry is, Diana. One word from me and your resume becomes radioactive. No firm will touch you. Not Chase, not Wells Fargo, not anywhere with a pulse and a budget." Diana's jaw clenched for a fraction of a second. Her eyes scanned the folder, but didn't touch it. There was no anger on her face, no visible fear, just the silence of someone calculating deeply. This wasn't just about her job. This was about her reputation, her daughter's tuition, her 16 years of hard-earned respect. And Gavin Trent, this suit-wrapped executioner, thought he could erase it all with one unsigned piece of paper. But Diana wasn't built like that. She had already decided something he hadn't accounted for. She would sign, but it wouldn't be his version. To Gavin Trent, Diana's silence looked like fear. Her steady hands, her calm breath, her eyes that didn't flinch. To him, that meant surrender. But he didn't know what was in her blazer pocket. A second folder, nearly identical. Same weight, same cream paper, same font. But on page 2, line 14, it said, "I resign under duress." 3 small words. Legally insignificant to the careless eye, but to a lawyer, to an employment court, they screamed coercion. They screamed liability. Diana wasn't here to go down quietly. She was here to give Gavin exactly what he wanted, just not in the way he expected. In her head, she replayed Riley's voice from the week before. "Diana, don't fight him with noise. Fight him with precision, with paperwork, with timing." This isn't surrender, it's precision. So Diana sat there watching the predator across the table. He thought he'd trapped her. He had no idea. He'd walked into hers. Diana held the Mont Blanc pen between her fingers. It felt heavier than expected, like it carried more than ink, like it carried consequence. She looked up, locking eyes with Gavin Trent one last time. "I'll need a copy for my records." Gavin scoffed. "No copies. Sign and leave. Security will escort you out." Diana nodded slowly. Her hand moved with elegance, but behind that grace was weeks of rehearsed precision. As she reviewed the letter, her fingers slipped the real document, her version, underneath his. The switch was flawless. Same caper, same fold, same font. Except line 14 no longer said, "I voluntarily resign." It now read, "I resign under duress." She signed, Diana M. Rowe. The same signature, the same blue ink. She closed the folder gently, as if sealing a coffin, then pushed it across the table. "It's done," she said softly. Gavin smiled victory, curling at the corners of his mouth. He didn't even open the folder to double-check. Of course not. Predators rarely check their prey when they think it's already dead. He turned back to his laptop. "Security will be here in 5 minutes," he said. "Leave your keycard with Margaret." Diana stood. She didn't flinch, didn't look back, but just before reaching the door, she turned. Calmly, she placed a sealed white envelope on the center of the table. Gavin looked up, puzzled. "What's this?" he asked. She paused, one hand on the door handle. "Something for your reading pleasure," Diana replied with a faint smile. Then she left, heels clicking, head high. Behind her, Gavin opened the envelope. Inside, everything. Copies of fake vendor invoices, log-in timestamps showing unauthorized payment approvals, corporate records tying shell companies to Gavin's brother, and at the top, a handwritten note. Line 14 says, "Under duress. My attorney has this conversation recorded. Your move." For the first time that morning, Gavin Trent wasn't smiling. Before he came for Diana Rowe, Gavin Trent had already left a trail of casualties across corporate America. On paper, he looked like a miracle worker. 7 companies in 10 years. Each one listed glowing bullet points. Restructured departments, increased efficiency, reduced cost. But if you peeled back those lines, all you'd find were bloodstains hidden beneath spreadsheets. In Chicago, a promising startup folded 6 months after his streamlining. In Dallas, a 40-person department was dissolved overnight. In Atlanta, 3 whistleblowers vanished from the org chart before the quarter even closed. Same pattern, same buzzwords, same results. Where Gavin went, silence followed. But it wasn't peace. It was the silence of careers quietly buried under layers of NDAs and voluntary departures. He never stayed long. Just enough time to gain control, clear out resistance, reroute reporting structures, and then disappear. With a bonus, with a golden parachute, with a handshake that reeked of bleach and smoke. The irony? He never got fired because no one ever dared to say out loud what he really was. Not a fixer, not a leader, but a corporate hitman, paid to purge, trained to smile while doing it. And now he was at Helixson Corp, where he thought Diana Rowe would be just another checkmark on his resume. He had no idea. She was about to be his final footnote. At first, it was subtle. Too subtle to be called sabotage, too quiet to scream threat. But Diana Rowe had been in corporate America long enough to feel when the air shifted. And it was shifting. It started with the meetings. Weekly briefings she used to lead now happened without her. No explanations, no forwarded invites. Just a calendar that stopped filling up. Then came the edits. Reports she submitted flawless, verified, were returned full of red ink. Not corrections, not suggestions, but distortions. Numbers moved, projections altered, charts changed just enough to look wrong under the board's eyes. The worst part, it all came with polite emails. "Hey, Diana, just adjusted a few figures for clarity. Thought this version might be more in line with leadership cone." But she knew. She always knew. It's not clarity they want, she thought. It's collapse. The atmosphere around her began to freeze. Colleagues who once shared jokes and coffee now avoided eye contact. Lunchroom conversations stopped when she entered. Her name was no longer copied on threads she used to start. Even her own team grew distant. Her analysts, once open and loyal, now spoke in short, clipped sentences. The fear wasn't loud. It was quieter than a whisper, but it was everywhere. At first, Diana thought she was the only target, the only one Gavin Trent wanted to erase. But then, Patricia from compliance was gone. No farewell email, no LinkedIn update, just gone. Whispers said she had questioned an invoice. One vendor, one line item, one polite email asking for clarification. And 3 days later, her office was empty. Then it was Mark from procurement. He'd made a comment, barely a comment, during a team meeting. Shouldn't we get a second quote before approving this? 2 weeks later, he was transferred to another region. But everyone knew what that really meant. Don't ask questions. Don't rock the boat. And above all, don't look too closely at Gavin's paperwork. Diana began connecting the dots. It wasn't just her. It wasn't even personal. This was a system, a machine, built to cut, conceal, and crush. It used polite memos, performance reviews, and HR policies as its weapons. It didn't fire people. It bled them out, quietly, efficiently, without leaving a bruise you could photograph. And suddenly Diana realized, I'm not just in a power struggle, I'm standing inside a clean, silent war zone. And in this war, silence wasn't just complicity, it was currency. They showed up quietly, no announcement, no contracts, no kickoff meetings, just there. Slipped into the system like a whisper. Meridian Solutions, Apex Consulting Group. On paper, they looked official. Logos, PO numbers, strategic advisory services. But something felt wrong. Too polished, too vague. The billing, $42,000, $47,500, $49,950. Every invoice was just below the $50,000 threshold, the number that would trigger mandatory board-level review. Clever, calculated. Diana leaned closer to the screen. No mailing address, no contact person, no project start date. No deliverables attached. Only one thing was consistent. They always got paid. And always with Gavin Trent's direct approval. She opened Helixson's internal vendor portal and cross-checked the dates. Like clockwork, every 2 weeks, funds were wired. No red flags in the system because Gavin had likely built it that way. Diana's heart pounded. She wasn't just looking at suspicious vendors. She was staring at fraud. She didn't scream. She didn't storm into Gavin's office. She didn't send angry emails. That would have made her predictable, disposable. Instead, Diana turned her apartment into a war room. Every night, after everyone else logged off, she stayed behind, not working late, but watching, collecting, preparing. Screenshots of vendor profiles, emails printed and timestamped, system logs copied to a personal hard drive, everything backed up to 2 encrypted cloud services. She didn't tell anyone. Not her team, not her daughter. Not even Riley at first, because this wasn't a warning mission. It was documentation for battle. I don't need to shout, she whispered to herself, staring at the glowing screen. I need to record. And every click, every save, every folder was a nail in the coffin Gavin hadn't even noticed being built. The city slept, but Diana didn't. Her apartment glowed with dim blue light as she sat cross-legged on the floor, papers around her like landmines. Flash drives, printed invoices. A legal pad filled with names and dates. She stared at her phone for a long moment, then dialed. 3 rings, a click, and then Riley West speaking. His voice was groggy but alert. Diana didn't waste time. He's going to try to force me out, she said. Not fire me, force me to sign. There was a pause. Then Riley, calm as ever, replied, If he tries to make you sign anything, don't. Say nothing, sign nothing. Let me handle it. But Diana's voice was steady, even, controlled. No, she said. I'm going to sign. Another pause, longer this time. Diana, no, if you sign, you're surrendering. She smiled just slightly. Not if I sign my version. She already had it printed. Same letterhead, same spacing, same words, except 3. I resign under duress. The signature wouldn't be consent. It would be evidence. Gavin didn't shout. He didn't insult her in front of the team. He was far more dangerous than that. Instead, he handed Diana a PIP, a performance improvement plan. The cover page was polite, professional, HR buzzwords and neutral tones. But inside, a loaded weapon. Arbitrary goals, unrealistic deadlines, vague language like demonstrate increased alignment with leadership priorities, show improved agility in response to evolving needs. What did that even mean? The deadlines were stacked, the metrics were impossible, and worst of all, it wasn't meant to help her improve. It was designed to make her fail, because if she failed, then Gavin could say, see, she was underperforming. We didn't fire her, she just wasn't up to standard. And just like that, the story would shift, from whistleblower to problem employee. Diana stared at the document, and for a moment she almost laughed. This isn't a plan, she whispered. It's a paper cage. But she didn't rip it up. She filed it, photocopied it, another brick in her case. The hardest part wasn't the threats. It wasn't even the bogus evaluations. It was the silence, the glances, the sudden hush when she entered the break room, the empty seat no one took next to her. One by one, her team, the same people she mentored, backed, fought for, stopped looking her in the eye because someone told them to watch her, to report her, to forward her emails, to log every time she left her desk. It's just protocol, one whispered. We're told to track performance gaps, but it wasn't about performance. It was about isolation, a slow freeze-out, from smiles to stiff nods, from conversations to corridors of silence. At lunch, Diana sat alone. At meetings, she spoke and no one responded, like a ghost in the office she once led. But she didn't crumble. She took notes. She memorized who changed their tone. She saved every suspicious reply. She kept the truth close, not for revenge, but for precision. If they're going to bury me, she thought, I'll write the eulogy myself. The room was quiet. No assistants, no HR, just Diana and Gavin behind a closed office door. She sat across from him, calm but alert. He leaned back in his chair, almost casual. Then came the sentence, I could make a few calls, or I could make it difficult for your daughter's tuition. Diana didn't respond, not with words, but something in her eyes hardened, because this wasn't about work anymore. This wasn't about performance metrics or team dynamics. He had crossed a line from corporate manipulation into personal warfare. Threatening a child's education, that was no longer strategy, that was extortion. And in that moment, Diana understood, he's scared, and scared men get sloppy. She memorized every word, recorded the time, logged the tone. This wasn't intimidation, it was evidence. It wasn't adrenaline, it wasn't fear. It was something colder, like a surgeon prepping for a procedure. Diana stood at her kitchen table. 2 sheets of paper, identical font, identical spacing, same type of printer, same Mont Blanc ink. She folded them again and again until both creased the exact same way. Then she practiced, slipping one behind the other, switching with one smooth movement. No hesitation, one chance, one moment. She rehearsed it dozens of times, and each time her hands moved faster. Sharper, like a magician perfecting the final flourish. But this wasn't stage magic. This was legal sleight of hand. A paper swap that would redefine intent with 3 words. I resign under duress. 3 words and a lifetime of meaning. Room B, frosted glass, the hum of the air conditioner, and silence. Gavin sat at the head of the table. He didn't even look up. He slid a document across, and with it his favorite Mont Blanc pen. Sign it, he said. We'll make it clean. Quiet. Professional. Diana took a breath. Then another. Slow. Measured. She reached for the pen. Her fingers brushed it gently. She acted tired, beaten. Just another casualty of politics. But inside, Everything was aligned. Her hand moved over the paper. She signed not the document Gavin had given her, but her version, the one with 3 silent words buried in line 14. I resign under duress. She capped the pen, slipped her signed version into the folder, left the room. But just before she did, she turned, smiled, and placed a sealed envelope on the table. "Something for your reading pleasure," she said. Then she walked out. Gavin waited. He always did. He liked to savor the win. The room was quiet again, still, smug. He picked up the envelope Diana had left behind, opened it. Inside, a flash drive. Printed invoices, Meridian Solutions, Apex Consulting, screenshots of payment logs, time-stamped records, an email trail with metadata. Then, photos. Still images of him editing documents, altering expense lines, removing approval chains. And on top, a single yellow sticky note. Line 14 reads, "Under duress. My attorney has this conversation recorded." His face drained. The color left his skin, like someone had pulled the plug on his blood supply. He reached for the document Diana had signed, reread it, line by line, and there it was, line 14, I resign under duress. He'd just accepted a document that acknowledged coercion, that admitted pressure, that turned his clean exit into a legal confession. The floor tilted. The silence turned violent. He had not won. He had signed his own downfall. It happened at 10:42 a.m. 2 men in suits, 1 woman in a blazer. Badges, gloves. Gavin Trent, you are under arrest for corporate fraud, financial manipulation, and obstruction of justice. He barely had time to stand. The office froze. Phones down. Mouths open. People stared as Gavin, the man who once commanded silence, was handcuffed and walked out. Behind him, another name surfaced, Richard Holbrook, Chief Financial Officer, exposed in the files as taking 15% cuts from shell contracts. He too was taken away that morning. And just like that, the regime collapsed. At 11:06 a.m., Diana Rowe walked back through the same glass doors, not as the woman who once sat in silence, but as the one who brought the truth back in. She wasn't escorted out, she was escorted in by the board, and the entire building stood still. She didn't fire everyone, she didn't yell, she didn't gloat. Instead, Diana Rowe did something most leaders never do. She rebuilt trust. The first thing she created was SpeakSafe, an anonymous reporting system that couldn't be traced or filtered. Then came mandatory leadership training, ethics, empathy, accountability, followed by a full forensic audit of every vendor, every expense, every past merger. No more backdoors, no more whispers. This isn't revenge, she told the staff one morning. This is healing a wound we all ignored for too long. People listened, and for the first time in years, they believed. Diana didn't just clean up the mess, she rewrote the culture. The Mont Blanc pen sat on her desk, polished, heavy, once used to threaten her future, now repurposed. Diana donated it to the Legal Aid Foundation for wrongful termination victims, along with a letter. Let this pen no longer sign silence. Let it write justice. The gesture made headlines, but that wasn't why she did it. In her office, framed behind her desk, hung the original resignation letter, line 14, I resign under duress, not as a reminder of pain, but as proof that even quiet resistance can shift empires, that precision is power. And that truth, when signed at the right time, can rewrite everything. It started with an email, then a phone call, then 17 invitations. One by one, Diana reached out to the people who had once been quietly pushed out, labeled as uncooperative, branded not a team player. 17 names, 17 wounds. They returned, hesitant, skeptical, but willing. And they were met not with speeches, but with silence, with eye contact, with open hands. Their desks were waiting. So were their ideas. And something strange happened in that building. People who once whispered now spoke freely. People who once looked down now stood tall. Because when dignity returns, so does courage. Weeks passed. The building hummed again. New ideas, new teams. But Diana Rowe still arrived early and still left last. Then one morning, a small package on her desk. No return address, no note, just a velvet box. Inside it, the Mont Blanc pen. And folded beneath on cream-colored paper, a single line handwritten in crisp black ink. You were right. Paper beats power. GT. She closed the lid slowly. No smile, no tears. Only silence, the kind that comes after a war won without shouting. She placed the pen in a drawer, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that the most dangerous person in the room is the one who stays calm. If you're being pushed, cornered, silenced, don't break, prepare. Because they can't destroy you if you've prepared well enough. Write it down, take screenshots, print the emails, record the calls. And when the moment comes, don't shout, don't run, don't flinch. Just write 3 words that change everything. Under, duress, signed. Hold the pen steady, because sometimes a signature is louder than a scream. Sometimes the world won't give you justice. You have to document your way to it. Diana Rowe didn't shout. She didn't threaten. She observed, she planned, she prepared. Because power without accountability is dangerous, but truth, armed with proof, is unstoppable. The lesson? Don't react, prepare. Don't break, record. Don't scream, write. And when the moment comes, sign with courage. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that silence is not surrender, then subscribe to Whispers of Life. We don't just tell stories, we honor resilience. We amplify quiet strength. And we whisper the truths others are too afraid to say out loud. Click that subscribe button, because next time, it might be your whisper that saves someone else.